Let's talk about the least understood tool in Photoshop. And this also has the worst name ever, but it's historically significant. The Unsharp Mask tool is the tool that you use to make things sharper. Why in the world would you call something that makes things sharper unsharp?
Because you're Adobe.
No, there's a reason for it, and it's historically significant. Back in the olden days, when you had film and you had an image that was slightly out of focus, there's no sharpening in Photoshop or anything. If you wanted to make it look sharper, there's an optical illusion that you could use. First, you make a duplicate negative that's just slightly out of focus on purpose. Then you take the original negative and the duplicate negative that's slightly out of focus, the Unsharp Mask, and you sandwich them together. You put them in the enlarger and you print it. It's an optical illusion, but the final version looks sharper than the original image that doesn't have the Unsharp Mask put on top of it. Why does that work? I don't know, but it fools the eye. And that's a technique that we're using for many, many, many years. And so Adobe, you look for the old techniques when you have modern ways of doing things. They named this the Unsharp Mask tool because it simulates the same thing that putting an out-of-focus mask or duplicate negative on top of the original does. It simulates the same thing of making it look sharper than it actually is. Unsharp Mask has 3 variables. The first thing I want to do is go to the Unsharp Mask tool. That's in Filter, Sharpen, and Adobe gives you several different methods of sharpening things. The only one I've really liked, because I really understood what it was doing, was the Unsharp Mask option, which is the last option in the menu. Unsharp Mask. And then it gives you these 3 values here: amount, radius, and threshold. And you can play with these things all day long. I've played with it all day long for many, many, many years. I discovered that there are 2 major categories where a certain set of settings will work very, very well. You want to have your end in mind. If you're going to be printing it very large, there's one set of numbers you can use. If you're going to be optimizing it for the web, there's another set of numbers you can use. And if you look at your handouts, I've itemized it for you. Here it is, the recommended Unsharp Mask values. When you're making prints and enlargements, you want to set the numbers to 90.9 and 0. When optimizing for web and email, you want the numbers to be 500.2 and 0. Up on the display, you'll really be able to see the effect that the second batch of numbers does. Plus, we're looking at it essentially as what's the web. It's a low resolution display. So let me show you how it works here. We're going to go back to Photoshop. First of all, it's not good to pixel people. Let me set this to 50%, which is a proper magnification to use when you're evaluating the sharpness. Let's go to Filter, Sharpen, Unsharp Mask. There's the 3 numbers, and I'm going to optimize it for web viewing. So 500, 0.2, and 0. Now, for every Photoshop action you have, or every filter, or every function, there's always this preview box over here, which you can turn on and off. Right now it's on. That's the effect it's going to have. Off, on, off. It's very, very subtle. I'm wondering, can you even see the effect on the screen? No, you can't. Let me zoom into 100% and try it again. Filter, Sharpen, Unsharp Mask. 500.2. Before, after. The plate, you can see it. You look at the numbers, especially around the second hand. It's very, very subtle. You don't want to over sharpen things. You do not want to over sharpen things, because if you do, you start to see things like that, and it starts to look photoshopped, and it starts to look. It's not real. People are going to say, "You're not a real photographer. You photoshopped that." Of course, nobody thinks that anymore. Now, if you don't Photoshop it, you're not a real photographer. It's amazing how times change. But I always believe in doing things very, very subtly, so it doesn't look like you Photoshopped it. And I found that 500.2 and 0 makes it look ultra crisp for web viewing. Every time you make an image smaller, which is what I recommend you do whenever you're emailing it for the web, every time you throw pixels away, you fuzzify the image a little bit. It's necessary to restore the sharpness that was there by using the Unsharp Mask tool every time you resize an image. So this isn't to enhance sharpness. This is to get it back after you made it fuzzy after you resized it. And that's the history of Unsharp Mask, and that's how it's actually used. If you were actually going to go and print it, I'd recommend using a different set of numbers. Sharpen, Unsharp Mask. You want to use, if your camera is less than 6 megapixels, and none of them are anymore, you'd be using 90 and 0.9. If you're more than 6 megapixels, I'd recommend using like 120 and 0.9, a little bit more intense. And here you can see the difference pretty clearly, especially in the Swiss icon over there. It's off, on, off, on. It's very, very subtle. But when you make the print, it makes a difference.